partnership around, it's like a home repair project. If you just pick it and then start working on that thing, it builds that closeness in. It isn't that that's the thing, it's that we can count on each other, that we're a better team. And so a lot of times just starting anywhere and saying, I want to feel closer to you, I don't want to fight so much, either way, you know, coming at it from either direction and saying, let's spend a little bit of time. And again, if we're looking at that 15 minutes a day, a lot of time, if you just check in with each other, a lot of it is just a little bit more, can we set aside some time this week? A little more intentionality on how we're going to spend that time together. So anything can be a project that you decide that you want to handle differently. Learn to kiss and make up. This floors me. The research says the average couple fights 8 times a day. Now what that means is that 4 times a day you think your partner's an idiot, and 4 times a day they think you're an idiot. Or stupid, or did something wrong, or whatever. Like that internal, oh my God thing, that's all it takes to count as a fight. I'm like, oh, well then I'm sometimes having a fight with my husband and he's not even home. You know, you didn't tell me we're out of milk, really? You know, that would actually count. So the thing about that is, if you're a couple that your 8 fights a day last for a minute, you're in great shape. 8 minutes a day, you can handle that. Most of the day you're really connected and positive. 8 minutes a day, you kind of think the other one's an idiot or whatever. A lot of couples, the couples that really I see in trouble, have a little bump into each other tension and then kind of take their corners and don't reconnect for hours or days. If you have 2-hour fights 8 times a day, you're pretty much not connecting at all. And so you want to think about how quickly you can reconnect. Because being married is kind of like a 3-legged race. You're going to trip and bump into each other, and there's just no way to not feel that feeling. Like I've been doing this a long time. I cannot help couples not fight. Couples that are not fighting are really in trouble, because then you're just not communicating at all. You're going to fight. If you have kids and they have siblings, my kids fight way more than 8 times a day. But mostly they actually enjoy each other's company. They just bump into each other and think they're a lot, and then they quickly recover. They have so much more recovery time as children than we do as adults. Again, none of the sulking, none of the weirdness. And so you want to really work on admitting that you're hurt, trying to get some kind of a peace offering, some kind of a, can we talk about bidding, like some kind of a way to invite your partner back into the relationship when they've pulled away. For a long time I would ask couples when the fight started, when the fight was really over. Again, it's interesting differences. Women will say the fight started a lot earlier and ended a lot longer. So women are having 3-hour fights and guys are having an hour fight, the same fight. So again, it costs us more because we saw things coming, we didn't feel like things were good, something was weird, then there's the fight, and then oftentimes we kind of take to our corners, we separate, and until we actually kind of talk, for women we have much more of a need to at least acknowledge the fight or talk about the fight. Whereas guys often have an easier time just shaking it off. Like, yeah, we're fine. But if we don't know you're fine, we're not fine. So a lot of times it's just the coming back, some kind of, research says women like apologies a lot more than men do. I'm not a big fan. I think it's just like with kids, like sometimes if we make a big deal about apologies, what you get is, I'm sorry, which doesn't really sound like an apology. So, and the truth of the matter is that mostly it's like, I bumped into you, I hurt your feelings, I let you down. And so if the more important thing is the reconnecting, taking some responsibility for it, certainly if you're gonna keep doing the same thing over and over again, your apologies are pretty worthless. So what we want is to feel like it got acknowledged and at least some effort is being made to not keep doing it. And again, it's just, people have different languages about forgiveness, people have a different feeling about forgiveness. This is often tied to how we were raised around apologies. If I was in charge of decreasing the divorce rate, I would say we really have to work on forgiveness. Because I don't quite know what that is. There are some people that have amazing abilities to forgive, and there are some people that just are a little more punitive, a little more harsh. You hurt me, I can't let go of it. And I don't know how you make it through a long marriage without a lot of forgiveness, because we're going to just keep bumping into each other. So focusing on your own personal part of, what do you need? What's in the way of you letting go of it? Why are you still holding on to it? You might have a point. Oftentimes when you're arguing with your partner, we get into this weird, like trying to convince them, and to just be able to say, you know what? hear your partner's side of it and consider that whatever they're telling you is valuable. You don't have to necessarily agree. Interestingly, the research says that most marriages have about 8 unsolvable fights that you are taking to the nursing home with you that have absolutely nothing to do with the quality of your marriage. So when couples come into my office and tell me what they're fighting about, they're very surprised that I don't really care. I don't care what you're fighting about, because you're going to probably fight about that forever. So my husband will go into the nursing home and tell the nurses when I'm 90 years old that I'm a slob. I guarantee you. That probably isn't going to change. He knew that when he married me. That was part of the deal. A lot of the things that just kind of bug us don't bug us when we're feeling really safe and connected. Suddenly that same person, because most of those are things that we knew when we married them, and then it bugs us more. So what we need to focus more on is in that connection and the putting money in the bank, building the connection and the relationship, and then we'll cut each other a little more slack on our humanity. Couples that live together without sex end up looking a lot like brothers and sisters. Because they're family and they love each other, but they tend to bicker a lot. There is something amazing about what the marriage is supposed to be. That this is a very intimate, and it's not, it's all this standoff. In most couples, somebody wants more intimacy and somebody wants more sex. Of course, the research would say that men want more sex and women want more intimacy. It isn't always that case. But it's usually that if one wants one, the other one is missing the other. So if you feel like you can't feel close to someone unless you're having sex, and you don't feel like you can have sex unless you're feeling close, you end up with a partner where there's a standoff. And this just happens. We get stuck. Oftentimes, when kids are little, women have a dramatic decrease in sex drive. And it's not just kids. I mean, there's something about settling into a long-term relationship that really changes the way women relate to sexuality, that we get very comfortable. And that kind of romance, there's something about the mystery and the intrigue and the chase and all that, and there's not a lot of that in marriage. There's not a lot of spontaneity once you've had kids. And so it's kind of like we have to find a way to reinvent our sex life after kids, later into marriage, and I don't think we've had a lot of, most of us didn't grow up with families where that was openly discussed. It isn't something we talk about openly with our friends. So how do you keep the spark alive? How do you reinvest in your sexual relationship? How do you stay connected? One thing I've really noticed is that oftentimes low sex drive can be really related to resentment. So if you haven't been taking care of that intimacy, that keeping the tank fill, staying close, being kind of pissed off all the time is not really great for your sex drive. And so a lot of times we have to get it's get the conflict down before we get the intimacy up. And so we have to get people getting along a little bit better. I use the analogy of kind of money in the bank, that if you're fighting all the time and they're big fights, then you're probably overdrawn on your bank account. And so there's nothing there, and we're all kind of in survival mode. If we start putting a lot more positive in, take care of some of that conflict, the temperature starts to go up a little bit, and we start to get a warmer relationship, and the household feels a lot warmer. And I think that's how we want to raise our families, in a warm, loving environment. And inside of that, then at least we can talk about what's needed to increase the intimacy. How do we find time? How do we prioritize? What's gotten in the way? What's been uncomfortable? What's changed? How do we recreate this? The research is really clear that it's a weird statistic that great sex lives don't guarantee a good relationship. But if your sex life feels like it's in the "we have a problem" column, it makes people really insecure. And if you think about those attachment needs we talked about at the beginning, that if you had a baby and one of their primary needs was not being attended to, that baby ends up with some big problems. Like, those basic needs are really important, and you can't feel safe when the person that you love isn't responding to your attachment needs. That can be true for intimacy too. Sometimes I feel like when there's not enough emotional intimacy, it's kind of like being locked out of your own house. Every once in a while, somehow something will go screwy and I won't have my key to the house. And I just get this very visceral response, like, everything I know and love is right here, and I can't get to it. That's ridiculous. It's my house. And when my partner's being kind of weird, when my husband gets a little sulky, I feel the same way, like he's put the walls up and he's locked the door and I can't come in. And it feels really, it doesn't feel sensible. It makes you a little crazy. And so those kind of needs to connect are really primitive and our basic needs. And so being able to say, because what tends to happen is that a lot of us just kind of go, I'm fine. We just lower the needs, we deal with it. But building something between the two of us, something that's stronger than just the individuals, means tackling some of these tougher questions and asking for what you need and your needs to be met by your partner. So use weekends wisely. So if we're going to try to actually, if we're very, very busy people, nobody has enough time for their relationship, we have to take those 15 minutes, we have to really find time to invest in our relationship and our kids and our family. I think that people totally waste most of their weekends. Most people go to things, people will invite you to something like there's a family gathering and you go for 7 hours to something you hate. Like, we only have 2 days for all of our family needs, and you're gonna go to some stupid thing you don't even care about because somebody invited you and you have to go. And so I think that when you really start trying to balance your family needs and your relationship needs, trying to figure out, like a cockpit of an airplane, like we need this, and keep an eye on that. The kids are probably okay. The kids have had lots of attention this week. Do we get a babysitter? Do we make a date night? Who needs to sleep in this weekend? Because we just haven't even gotten enough sleep. Right now, everybody I know is coming down with a cold, a little bit of something right now. We should probably all stay home this weekend and just sleep so that we'll feel better. And what really makes the biggest difference? Like, how do we get some things done around the house that will make the week easier? And so I really am a big believer in usually like Thursday night, somewhere before the weekend really hits, to think about what do we really need this weekend as a family and as a couple. So again, the different kinds of needs and how do we take care of all of those. I am surprised at how many couples, it's family time and everybody's together and nobody's having any fun. I think that again, if we're gonna be really careful with how we use time, I think tag team parenting is really valuable. So if one person can be with the kids and the other person can go get one of the other needs accomplished and then switch off. So I need some personal time, you need some personal time, we need some couple times. There's all these little things that have to be taken care of. We have to be really diligent in getting all of those needs met. I do a lot of postpartum work with young moms, and when a mom has just had a baby and is struggling, I'll say, kind of, if I could give you 4 hours off the clock, didn't count for anything, what would you do with it? And the first thing that moms usually want is sleep. If you haven't been sleeping, you don't care about anything about sleep, and all you can think about is sleep. Once you're starting to sleep, oftentimes what I hear is, I could really use some time to myself. I just want to go to a bookstore, I just want to wander around. People will go to Target and not come back for a couple of hours, like, where were you? I was at Target. Sometimes it's having time alone in the house can be really valuable, because if you're home with the kids a lot and you can't ever get anything done, just getting the kids, we used to have Fleet Farm time. If I was really going a little crazy, Daddy would take the boys to Fleet Farm. They didn't think I was allowed, they thought it was a guy place, it was really funny. So I have, they're going to Fleet Farm and then McDonald's, and I would sit at home and try to get something done or nothing done, which was just as important. Once we get that need met, oftentimes the next need is either kind of the social, like I want to spend time with my girlfriends, I want to spend time with, I haven't seen my family for a while, some of the big community things, I want to be more connected, or oftentimes creativity. Like I miss some of my hobbies, because when you have small kids, hobbies really get lost. And then when a lot of those kind of individual needs get met, women start feeling more like connecting with their partners. But oftentimes not until a lot of those other things are taken care of, because it's like you're not really in your own body anymore. You've given so much away to your kids that there's not anybody there. And so if you don't really feel connected to yourself, it's hard to be connected to your partner. And that can be hard because, and I think dads have a different reaction to that whole process. I think dads can get really overwhelmed with the responsibility of life, and sometimes I think that they get very serious and very responsible, and then nobody's having any fun anymore. So learning how to really attend to how do we use our weekends, how do we use our time, what does this family most need? If we could give this family a little more time, because I think couples stability is the family stability. I think kids do a lot better when we're happy and we're sane. So you want to figure out ways to kind of make the best use of what's very little time in our lives. So of course we should all go on dates and vacations. We should all go to Hawaii. Nobody has marriage problems in Hawaii, I swear by it. We should all go to Hawaii. Actually, I've had couples, I only have had one couple that came back from a vacation to Hawaii and decided that they probably shouldn't stay married. Which I think is really telling, because really if you go on vacation and you remember how much you really love your partner, that's a really good thing. It's mostly then life is the problem, not your marriage. And it is the case. Once we slow down and we have enough time to play and we get to have fun and enjoy each other, we reconnect to the person that we married that we really liked. But we can't all go to Hawaii. So again, we have to figure out ways to, if we see that the charger is down to the last bar and we're on each other's nerves and we don't enjoy each other and all we do is fight, we have to figure out what makes the biggest difference. How do we get something? How do we get a date night? How do we get a weekend away? How do we get a break? Yes, I would love it if everybody went out once a week. And even then, mostly we're so busy that it's grabbing dinner somewhere and it's the same place we always go to. When I really want couples to kind of reinvent their relationship, I challenge them to each plan a date a month where they take the other one out, just like when you were dating. Like, you don't sit around and go, I don't know, where do you want to go? That is not how people date. We usually say, I mean, when we were dating, people would call and say, hey, I have tickets to this concert, will you go? And we would say yes, even if we hated that band or whatever, because we wanted to spend time with the person. And so there's a way of there's a way that dating can be really seducing someone, like taking them someplace new and treating them nicely and surprising them, or showing them something that you are interested in that we don't tend to do as old married folks. So there's some ways to kind of reinvent dating even, instead of just kind of doing the same old thing that we always do. So figuring out how you can get I love the idea of kind of one night a month alone, one weekend, quarter alone, and one yearly vacation, if at all possible. Now I know that a lot of people that isn't possible. And then I think we have to find ways to do staycations. I think we have to do ways to get the kids to bed a little early, or get a babysitter, even just, arrange with the neighbors to have the kids. I'll take your kids for a weekend if you take my kids for a weekend, because we just really need to make it important. I really think teaching our kids that our marriage is important is really good for them. I think their security, we really are the ground under their feet. And so telling them that, being really open about that, we're going to stay together long past your adulthood. My husband is more important. And they bristle, but I think that they really love the idea that we are their home base. And if we're not happy, it has a huge impact on them. So prioritizing that and knowing that they will be fine because we're investing in what's best for them. So yeah, there are lots of ways to make it a little more fun, to be able to challenge each other, to do something different. A lot of times we need to be doing more active dates. Like, we need to play. We need to go do stuff. Most of us kind of fall into a trap of movies, dinners, the same old thing. Sometimes it's just going someplace, like pretend that you don't live here and go, you can drive to the other side of town and the coffee shops and the restaurants are all the same, but they're different. And that really does spice things up a little bit, at least gets you out of your comfort zone and feels a little bit more special. And a lot of times I know that Valentine's Day is coming up. Valentine's Day often leads to disappointment because we have these big ideas of what it's supposed to be, and I really challenge couples to just